What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for your Overwatch. The first big Overwatch 2 patch just hit the beta. Let's take a look at what they ended up changing. First up is a bunch of bug fixes. As you might imagine, it is a beta after all. First up, fixed a bug where the thank you for reporting message would not clear. Fixed a bug where the names in the friends list would appear alphabetically regardless of game status. Fixed a bug where heroes that killed themselves would show incorrectly in the kill feed. Fixed a bug where health packs would sometimes be missing timers. Fixed a bug where Reaper would sometimes be auto-selected on hero select, which you never want. Don't pick Reaper. He's very weak right now after those nerfs. Fixed a bug where the control progress bar would sometimes be the wrong color. Made several adjustments to sound, volume, and mix. I really hope this is a big buff because the quality of life of the game was definitely knocking me out of immersion when there was obvious sound issues, which is a shame because the sound is so great, right? So getting this sorted hopefully will be a good thing. And also fix several crashes, the first of which goes into the heroes section now. The bug fixes for heroes, we want to always be careful to look out for because once in a while they'll change the way an interaction plays out, which may be a buff or nerf to certain interactions. The first one is to Wrecking Ball, where they fixed a bug where Wrecking Ball could crash other players, so literally unplayable, so it's good that has been fixed. I assume this means he's reinstated as well if that is fixed. He was disabled for a little bit. Doomfist fixed a bug where melee attacks would not deal damage to Doomfist during power block. I don't actually know if this includes from the back, because he's only supposed to reduce damage from the front. So there's a chance that your Reinhardt swings or Genji blades weren't doing full damage to Doom even in the back when it's supposed to. So if that's the case, that is a buff to the interaction from what you're used to. But also, you'll be sneaking in that 8.5 damage in the front the way Ryan's hammer is supposed to be when he's using power block. Not a huge change there because obviously power block is so strong anyway, you might not even have noticed. Next change is to Roadhog. Fixed a bug where Roadhog's hook cooldown would start on return instead of cast, which would have lengthened the cooldown accidentally. Soldier 76 fixed a bug where Soldier's heavy pulse rifle might snap awkwardly during tac visor, which was a spectator bug as well, even in Overwatch 1, so it's good that's finally getting fixed. Fixed a bug where Soldier 76 would have a slanted UI when wearing his ugly sweater skin, rebelling against the Christmas spirit, I think. Symmetra fixed a bug where shooting Sims turrets into the horizon would cause turrets to be unusable. Hanzo fixed a bug where Hanzo's white wolf skin would appear invisible, so we no longer get the bald Hanzo skin. That's not nice. Blizzard, when do we get some representation for the follically challenged? Can Junkrat get a skin without hair, please, just to make me feel a little more at home? Brigitte has a bug fix where Brig's shield did not block damage from above. I've never encountered that because we don't play against flying characters ever in Overwatch 2 because they're not great. But that is now fixed. Ana fixed a bug where Nano Boost on Doomfist would overwrite his damage reduction. I assume obviously from power block they mean, which is where he gets that from. That's important because that means prior to this, when Doom had Nano Boost on, power block was only blocking 50 instead of 90. Now granted, when you're using Nano, you want to be attacking, not defending anyway, but that is an important thing to be fixed and will buff Doom a little bit. Lucio fixed a bug where Sonic Amplifier could jam and not reload. Maps, Midtown adjusted some geometry on top of the train to prevent players from staying there indefinitely. So probably staging as Doomfist or other characters that like to hang up on top of buildings. You'll probably slide off now. Coliseum adjusted some geometry that could be abused by players. Now, onto the hero changes. Sojourn. Railgun alt fire projectile width has been increased from 0.05 to 0.1 meters. Power slides cooldown has been reduced from 7 to 6 seconds. And the developers say, we saw a lot of players at varying skill levels struggling to land shots with her alt fire. So we are making the projectile width wider. Sojourn is all about mobility, and we wanted her to move around the maps more freely. We think that this will help increase her effectiveness and make her even more fun to play. This is interesting because players that were in the alpha noticed that in the beta, it seemed like her railgun was harder to hit. Now, they're saying the secondary fire and projectile, which is confusing me a little bit because I thought it was her primary fire full auto that was the projectile and the railgun was a hit scan, but I'm pretty sure they mean the railgun is now easier to hit with a double the size of its hitbox or projectile or whatever it is. So quite a big buff, I think, more forgiving. And keep in mind, I think as you're like hovering your crosshair above a enemy's head, it's going to more snipe at its head and give you more criticals and more one-shot kills. And the alpha, this was oppressive at whatever value it was. I don't know what it was, but there's a chance that she becomes really good really quick if they keep adjusting this. So we'll have to see. 1 second on her movement cooldown, neither here nor there, but her ability to snipe things will definitely change. But also, her power might be tied to how good Soldier is and how easy it is. So his nerfs are coming up next. Heavy pulse rifles damage has been reduced from 20 to 18. Sprint's movement speed has been reduced from 50% to 40%, and Tac Visor now allows for critical hits if a shot would have been critical without it running. No longer removes damage fall off from his heavy pulse rifle during the ultimate. So the devs say this: we believe Soldier 76 was overtuned during the first week of the PvP beta. He was extremely mobile with his new damage passive that increases movement speed by 10% to all damage heroes, of course. We brought his sprint ability down a bit with the new passive in mind. Soldier 76 has always been a high damage output hero, but we are seeing fewer counters to him with one less tank per team. We lowered the damage of his heavy pulse rifle to fit with 5v5. We wanted to make Tactical Visor a more interesting ultimate for players who want to push their aim skill through the ability. The point of this change isn't purely to buff him or counterbalance the nerfs. We wanted to make Soldier 76 more fun to play while rewarding mechanical skill. So this is really interesting. This means that you can go for headshots with Tac Visor and be rewarded for it, but if you miss anyway, you're still gonna hit, because that's how Tac Visor works, right? It just auto targets. So it's kind of the best of both worlds, I think, but also a key nerf. The damage fall off at range was really OP in Overwatch 2, not having it, right? Having infinite range on the Tac Visor means miles in the distance. You could snipe someone down. Now it will be doing its normal damage, which, you know, at varying ranges means it'll do even less, and starting off at an even lower point, right? Each pellet of the ultimate does 18 instead of 20 now, but it can headshot. So all things considered, I think Soldier's playstyle still fits in Overwatch 2 quite well, but hopefully what we'll see is that he isn't easily overperforming. Like, he'll just fit in the game, but other more skillful characters will be able to compete with him more easily. There's a chance he's dumpstered, but I think the damage isn't quite low enough considering how accurate he is. Remember, not having spread on his weapon in Overwatch 2 feels like a really big deal, whereas in Overwatch 1, there were so many shields and block abilities that there were small little windows to land those damage, whereas I feel in Overwatch 2, you always have a lane to be very accurate. So the breakpoints are pretty important here, whereas with 20 damage shots, that meant you needed 10 hits to the body or 5 headshots to take down a squishy. Now it will be 11.1, which means 11 shots to the body and like a melee or a little bit extra, or a full extra shot at 12. So that's kind of an interesting breakpoint. It could take 2 more bullets in a straight up duel in order to take down an opponent, or like 1 more headshot. So that might seem very minor, but also it just means it's less easy to melt things. So pretty important nerfs, I think, will open up the door for other characters to be good. Sombra has her movement speed reduced from 65 to 50 during stealth. The devs say after a week of testing the new damage passive, as in the move speed increase by 10% across the board, we decided to balance Sombra's stealth speed with the 10% movement in mind. So I think Sombra is kind of underutilized in quick play matchmaking, but is definitely like a ranked try-hard hero that has a lot of potential, especially in pre-mades, but even for anyone who really wants to like understand the game. I think you go really far with just game sense alone on Sombra with her rework, so I'm interested to see how that develops. I think she's not that popular of a hero, but a lot of heroes that we thought were super good might have been marked pretty easily if Sombras were lurking everywhere, like Doomfist and Orisa, especially when they're using their block abilities, or Orisa, her channeling ultimate. I think EMPs and hacks just shut her down immediately for free, and it's so easy. So I think we might feel differently about some of these other characters if Sombra's more popular. Next up, tank changes. Roadhog's whole hog gets like a whole rework. This is crazy. Look at this. This ability has changed from being channeled like a Pharah, Reaper, or Cassidy ultimate into a transform ultimate. So it's more like Soldier 76, Genji, and Winston, that they keep their ultimate over time. And this is what that means. The ultimate, it's no longer a weapon that automatically fires. You must press primary fire to use the ultimate, and you can use normal abilities during Whole Hog without canceling the ultimate. And stuns will no longer cancel Whole Hog. Okay, so get this straight. You can be using the big spread weapon of Whole Hog and hook someone into it. I mean, that is insane. The devs say, we saw Roadhog underperforming, so we are making his ultimate more interesting, effective, and fun. Roadhog was dying frequently while using Whole Hog, so we are trying to give him more options and flexibility in his ult. I'll also say, his power is almost always directly related to Ana's power, who is going to be getting some nerfs in this patch as well. So keep that in mind. Not being stunned in his ultimate, I'm not sure how I feel about that. Stuns, there's not as many of them. However, at the same time, you can almost guaranteed you'll be stunned if you pick Hog, because you're the only defense for the team. So you'll always be stunned by the Doomfist or Orisa or enemy Hog or whatever they have. Sigma, I mean, all the tanks have some kind of stun, it seems, right? So that probably is a good thing that he can't be stunned in his ultimate, but will make him quite insane in that ult. The question is, does he do anything without the ult? Not so sure what I think about that quite yet. Winston's Tesla Cannon's secondary fire ammo cost has been reduced from 20 to 12. The developers say this change to Winston's secondary fire enables him to use it more often without sacrificing as much of his primary fire. We want his secondary fire to feel less restrictive to use and more fluid like his kit. I'm a huge fan of the Railgun Winston myself, and they keep slowly buffing him over time. I think is a character that's going to creep up out of the woodwork and just isn't that popular right now because most of the players playing are high skill. But if you can't play Doomfist very well, I think you can get a lot done with Winston. Now, next up is Wrecking Ball. His roll ability now has its knockback increased by 36%. The devs say, we are reverting Roll's knockback to the original value from when Wrecking Ball was launched. We wanted to give Wrecking Ball a more unique role, see what you did there, Blizzard, as a dive tank that can split up enemy teams. We made this change with the tank passive of 30% knockback resistance in mind. This, I think, is really intelligent because one of the things that was really making Wrecking Ball feel useless in 5v5 is that so many plays that he used to reliably get, like knocking and displacing the formations of enemy team comps around, particularly knocking key heroes like Zarya forward away from the Rhine shield, or let's say Orisa or Sigma away from their shields to isolate them. Well, now all the tanks are more resistant to that play, and there's only one of them, and there isn't so much of a death ball all the time for him to interact with. So that's all making Wrecking Ball worse. However, now with the knockback reverted to what it was at its like OP state from Overwatch 1, he should be able to displace the tanks forward a bit more, but also keep in mind, this means he'll also get some of those boop off plays he used to get all the time in Overwatch 1. Once they reduced it originally, there's some like spots from Ilios Well, for example, where he swings around the enemy team and just couldn't really scoop them into the pit. Now I think he will again. So knockoffs on squishies will be happening. It turns out that Blizzard just wants all the tanks to be able to insta-kill squishies. Like, Doomfist comes in on you and blows you up. They need Wrecking Ball to do the same thing with his knockoff plays. I still think Ball might struggle considering how reliable the other tanks are at their job, but at least they're trying to give him a bit of an identity. I wonder to what degree this will have to be good for him to be playable, because ultimately I think Doomfist just kind of does everything Ball tries to do, easier and more straightforward, and has a better tanking ability with Power Block. Next up, Zarya's Graviton Surge duration has been reduced from 4 seconds to 3.5 seconds. The developers say there are less counters to Graviton Surge with one less tank per team, and phase effects no longer escaping Zarya's ultimate. We observed the ultimate overperforming, so this change brings it in line with 5v5 gameplay. I mean, that's a pretty confident statement from them. I don't know if half a second brings it in line necessarily, because even with one tank in the ultimate shielding, I feel like players last max 1 to 2 seconds in a grav anyway. It's like, I don't know if I feel like I've seen an enemy live throughout the duration of a grav. Now, this will be important, of course, up against certain defensive ultimates like Sound Barrier, Transcendence, Immortality Field coming in to save you. That's where it starts to actually matter, I think. But a lot of the time, the grav just destroys. Keep in mind, a lot of those abilities that save you are harder to get to just based on the positioning of where your supports want to be from the things you want to grab. Like getting a trank all the way across the map to save someone takes some time, so sometimes they end up dying anyway. And hitting an anti-nade on it isn't too hard. On to the support changes. I know many of you are going to want to know what's up with this role. Lucio has his cross-fade self-healing penalty increased from 30% to 60%. So he'll heal only 60% of his passive value. The developers say Lucio had incredible survivability with crossfade stacked with the new support role passive. So we reduced the amount it heals himself. My issue with this is I don't feel he even really needs crossfade's healing. He can stay on speed boost, move a bit faster, and get around all the cover spots of Overwatch 2 quite easily and get that automatic self-heal. So I think it's important that the speed at which Lucio easily goes back in, because whether you have 100 health or 125 health, that's a big difference between whether you think you're going to get one shot or not by the thing you're trying to go duel, right? So the timing of that really does matter in his uptime and how much he can just keep harassing you and getting on you. So a good nerf, but I think it's pretty small, and we might see Lucio be the target of several nerfs over the course of Overwatch 2, because I think he is just that strong. He's like the Brigitte of this game, where he just fits the game so well that they might have to be more heavy-handed than they'd like to, whereas I think this change is probably like a mid-tier Lucio nerf. I think higher-tier Lucio players don't even care about this. Up next, Baptiste Biotic Launcher healing ammo has been increased from 10 to 13. The developers say Baptiste is underperforming because teams aren't playing as grouped up right now. Increasing his healing ammo will let him heal more targets who aren't necessarily grouped up. I'll say I think Baptiste is a load of fun to play in 5v5 because it's more challenging. It's less of just bunkering down behind shields and safety, and more like getting in the mix with a lot of difficult shots to hit, both on the enemy team and your team. But the 10 shots definitely felt limiting when the shots you have to hit are often pretty hard, where a teammate is off in the distance trying to get around cover and you're trying to heal them, and you don't want to take too long to worry about your ammo capacity and be reloading too much. So I think this is a good buff for Baptiste, and maybe doesn't over buff him, but is like a healthy buff. It's like a very safe buff. I doubt there's any damage that'll be caused by this change. Ana's Biotic Rifle has its ammo increased from 12 to 15, but Biotic Grenade gets a significant nerf. Duration has been reduced from 4 seconds down to 3. The devs say Ana's Biotic Grenade was too effective with one less tank and more infrequent barriers, so we are reducing the duration of the ability. We also saw Ana using her grenade less frequently on herself because of the new support passive ability. To help compensate for her grenade, we wanted to give her power back through increasing her Biotic Rifle's ammo. That's interesting. So they're worried about like healing uptime, I think, or just general uptime. I'll say there's two areas where this matters the most. I think most people's first thought is anti-nade. You anti-nade the enemy, they're marked for death for 4 seconds. But the one that I think you might even notice more is on your teammates, because anti-nade, often you want to use it when something's low and you can go finish it off anyway. Obviously, the longer it is, the longer they'll feel scared to fight. But where I think you get a big boost to it having a long duration is when you nade your own tank like Doomfist or Orisa in the front line, and that healing buff lasts so long, you shoot them multiple times. Keep in mind, it also gets the healing buff effect from the other support on your team, so that tank gets like another extra life on top of the extra lives they have built into their own kit. So that 1 second is significant. It's going to reduce the amount of health points tanks get by maybe like a few hundred even, because if both healers were healing into that amp healing effect for that second, well, you're not getting that effect anymore. So keep a lookout for that, tank players. And as well, I think the duration is something that a character like Roadhog will really be happy to see, that he can take a breather a second sooner than he was in the previous build. Next up, change to Zenyatta. Base shields have been increased from 150 to 175. So he gets a thick boy Cassidy-esque health buff, which we know getting a little bit of extra health can sometimes go a long way. But that's not even the most interesting change. The next one is there's a new passive added, Snap Kick. This passive increases quick melee damage by 50% and significantly increases its knockback. The developers say Zenyatta has trouble fighting at close range, so he was at a disadvantage if an enemy flanked or jumped on top of him. His new passive, Snap Kick, will help him create space and put enemies at his fighting range. We think his new passive will be a fun adjustment to his kit, but we also want this change to acknowledge community concerns. We understand 5v5 has made support heroes feel more vulnerable, and we wanted to give Zenyatta tools to help create space between him and his enemies. I mean, Zen's out there pulling a "This is Sparta," kicking you off the map. Can you actually do that? Can you kick enemies off the map? Is the knockback that significant? They don't give the numbers of the distance on this, so I don't know what to expect. I don't know if it's like a Lucio boop, which I don't think it would be that much, but even if it's like a little bit, you can get knockoff kills with the Sparta kick, was what it should be called. But also keep in mind that little bit of distance matters of your spatial control against a lot of characters that are closer to you, like let's say a Tracer. The closer she is, the more damage she's going to do, basically, because all her pellets are going to hit. Whereas you get a little distance, a lot of times characters struggle to hit you, or they start to have damage fall off, and you can, of course, set up your own shots, booping someone up and setting them up for the follow-up shot. Zenyatta now is the embodiment of the bloodthirsty support, being more tanky, reminding me of the glory days when Jonak was stacking Brig armor on top of him. I think this is pretty fair, to be honest, with how easy it is to track Zen down, and I'm interested to see what this is going to do. I'll admit, I was going to suggest trying Zen to have 25 armor. I actually edited it out of my video talking about support changes because I thought it was just so over the top, but they gave him more shield health, which is kind of the same thing. I wish I kept it in the video. I might have looked like a genius, but this might be perfect. We'll have to see how effective Snap Kick actually is. Next up, Brigitte's Shield Bash knockback has been doubled. It's difficult to tell when Brigitte lands a Shield Bash because the impact of that ability was not easily noticeable. That is a subtle change that will make the ability feel more satisfying. Not sure they mean it will do much, but maybe she as well will be able to "This is Sparta" people off the map, or at least get people away from her. I think like if Shield Bash felt like another flail, or you could bash into flail, and that's like 2 knockbacks on a thing to keep them really far from you. Remember, Brig and Zen are kind of friends oftentimes, so them both having abilities to kick you away means that maybe they're creating some space against the more divey type characters in the game. We'll have to see. This is a pretty interesting patch, and I'm happy to see the devs iterating quickly after the beta only being out a few days, really. Let's dig into this patch and see what we think. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave it a like. In the comment section down below, let me know your thoughts on all of these changes. Do you like aggro monk Zen? I think it's a pretty cool change myself. If you enjoyed the video, leave it a like, and don't forget to hit subscribe and click the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter. Come talk to us about the game on there as well. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.